Happy Monday, everyone. Thanks for checking in to our latest Traded Black podcast. Good to have you all here this afternoon. I'm your host, Shad Dales, as usual, Anthony Varrell, coming on in just a moment. Today's podcast, we're going to be talking a lot about Pennsylvania, this new bill for adult use that was introduced that could be controlled by the Liquor Control Board. Is this a good thing? Michael Bronstein's going to highlight some of the things we need to be paying attention to and what's to come next in PA, because we all know this could be the next catalyst moment for the cannabis space as well. It's earnings season. So what should we be paying attention to as Cresco, Curaleaf, Green Thumb, Trulieve, the Cannabis, TerrAscend? If I missed anyone, I'm sorry, but all these companies reporting this week. So we're going to be busy, but that's okay. So with that, let's welcome in AV here on a Monday.
By the way, Mohammed, Pennsylvania did not legalize, so that is completely wrong.
That's right.
The bill passed the House. It's still got to pass the Senate, and it's going to get shredded. But we will get into that once Mr. Bronstein owns us or joins us.
All right. How was the weekend? Good?
It's good. Got some rain finally.
Did you guys?
Yeah. Got some rain finally, and then we got the Cats and Leafs tonight, which will be nice.
Oh, boys. Here we go. Anyone picking the Leafs to win that series is crazy. I don't see anybody. Yeah. I really would like to see a Stanley Cup rematch. That'd be amazing.
I don't want to see McJesus again. I'd prefer not to, but if we got to go through them again for a second Stanley Cup, I'll take it.
Yeah. Well, I know I'm Canadian, and I know there was a big game last night in Winnipeg, but I know as much as Winnipeg as somebody from Alabama would know it. I've never, ever been to Winnipeg, but it was pretty insane how that game finished last night, scoring with 1.6, like what they were down 3-1 with less than 2 minutes to go.
Rose, 3-1, less than 2 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great finish. And did you have your money on journalism or sovereignty on Saturday? I bet on sovereignty. That was a hell of a race.
Didn't bet on any of it. I'm not a big fan of horse racing.
Oh, no.
I don't pay attention to it at all.
You got to be a fan of the Derby, though, no?
Not really.
Man, oh man, what a mess that must have been. I went down to the Derby in 2019. It was like Saturday. It was raining sideways. And when you saw the people that actually party on the inside of the track with their rubber boots up to their knees, what a mess.
Yeah.
Mess. All right. We got earnings season. And like I said off the top, we got the biggest companies all reporting in the industry this week. So look, we've talked about this a number of times the last few podcasts. Growth is going to be front and center just because there's no new markets that have gone on market since the last earnings report. And really, I think what we see here is going to set the trend for the overall fiscal year. You want to explain a little bit further on that?
I don't agree with you that that's going to be the case.
You don't?
No. Trulieve,
why is
GTI, that? Well, let me just run through the companies first. Trulieve, GTI, and IPR report on 5/7, which is Wednesday. Trulieve, I'd be looking for their margins to stay in that, let's say, 58 to 61% range. See any sort of commentary about Florida, I would have to assume that prices have come down and they're starting to see a little bit of I don't want to say weakness, but competition from the hemp market as it's just proliferated in Florida. That being said, I'm also wanting to hear commentary from Kim as it relates to the hemp beverage business and if they would potentially be retrofitting any of their dispensaries that they have in Florida into a hemp store, which I'm not really expecting, but someone might ask to see if they're following suit with Curaleaf. GTI is going to do GTI. Stable top line, stable margins. Ben will probably peacock and tell the other MSOs to pay their taxes, do his normal song and dance, and then be on their way. IPR is probably the most interesting. They're going to have to talk about the defaults in the quarter. I'm curious to hear guidance for the dividend on a go-forward basis, and if any of the other tenants are currently in defaults. Then 5/8, which is Thursday, it's Curaleaf, Verrell, NewLake, the Cannabis, TerrAscend, and Jushi. That's a lot of reports. Curaleaf's after the bell. I'm not sure about Verrell. Not sure about Cannabis. Anthony Caniglio will be on with us at 4 p.m. on Thursday for the earnings call to do a live stream. And then TerrAscend and Jushi are, I think TerrAscend's after the bell. I'm not sure when Jushi is. Friday, we'll have Ziad and Jason on.
Yep.
Which we'll be able to talk to them about the Pennsylvania bill as well, as Pennsylvania is one of their big markets. And I'm curious to see what they have to say as far as Ohio goes. within the TerrAscend footprint. Then 5/9's Cresco to round out the week, and we'll have Charlie on Friday as well.
I know.
So we're also working to get Boris. I know Kim declined this time around, so we won't be covering Trulieve on the live stream, and then we'll hopefully get some other CEOs to come on as the week progresses.
Yeah, to answer your question, Joe, with CGC, I'm just looking right now. May 29th is their next earnings date. So that's a couple of weeks out. Some of you were actually asking, like, why we didn't include the Cannabist in some of the earnings reports in our newsletter this morning. And rest assured, we have reached out to the team and excited to tell you that probably the last week of May, we're going to have Jesse and David on, because I know, look, they've been doing a lot of work, the last couple of months. So I think the story that we were basically asking them or telling to a lot of our investor base or our audience base, I should say 6, 9, 12 months ago, is a lot different today than what it was a year ago. So we're going to get a full rundown, up-to-date information on where this company stands today, and more importantly, the major objectives moving forward in the next short term. So expect that. Yes, they have earnings this week, but I want people to rest assured we very much have this company on our radar, and we will be actually interviewing them a couple weeks after earnings season. So don't think that we're just shying away from that. But I also think it'd be interesting to see Verano's numbers, because they're one of the few cannabis companies that break down revenue-wise in individual states.
So
go ahead.
I was going to say Varrell. I'm expecting to see Varrell recover in Florida.
Why is that?
Because they had a bunch of grow rooms that were offline in Q4. I think making improvements ahead of adult use. They've brought them back online. I'm expecting to see their numbers start to trend up. They were down something crazy like 15% in Florida. I'm expecting those numbers to go up. Don't know how the full Q will be, but I'd also expect to hear potentially some guidance or commentary about Cresco in Europe. On the back of Charlie's panel at ICBC in Berlin about MSOs evaluating the European cannabis opportunity. That's coming purely speculative. That's not based on anything that I've heard from Charlie. Just kind of reading the tea leaves, and that could be something that takes shape.
All right, so we got scheduling wise, May 7th aftermarket again. Is who?
May 7th. It is. I already went through my notes.
NewLake.
May 7th. May 7th is Trulieve, Green Thumb, and IPR. May 8th is Curaleaf, Varrell, NewLake, which will have Anthony Caniglio on at 4. The Cannabist, TerrAscend, and Jushi. And Friday is Cresco.
Okay, we're trying to set up a interview as well with Jim Cacioppo from Jushi on their latest earnings. Special trade
after the bell. They have a call. Their calls at 5.
Yeah,
I already reached out to them to potentially have them on after Anthony on Thursday, but that's not going to work.
Yeah. Nice to have them on Friday, but Friday, as you said, we've got Jason and Ziad on.
Jason is on, Drew, on Friday.
Charlie as well. So back to back. Special live stream, as you said, Thursday, 4 o'clock. We'll have Anthony Caniglio on to talk about their latest numbers. But an even more interesting angle, in addition to earnings, Anthony was at ICBC last week. So I'm anxious to see what he experienced and how many North American companies were actually in attendance last week in Germany, because we keep talking about the German market. And if there was a lot, we'd love to get some of the takeaways and feedbacks as to what was going on there. But man, oh man, something
interesting opportunity. That's actually what I'm expecting to hear from Curaleaf. Boris has been talking about the European opportunity as it's starting to eclipse, I think, the $100 million mark, or he said that they won't start really elaborating on it until it eclipses that $100 million mark. Keep in mind that they've got the Canadian LP that's exporting to Germany. They've got 420 Pharma that's fully online in Germany. I would expect to hear pretty strong and updated language from Boris as it relates to the EU opportunity, and then I want to hear about the beverages.
What's Torsten's title from 420 Pharma?
I have no idea.
Been going back and forth with him, but interesting person that we met actually in Washington last month. But again, what we're trying to do is get some European people on with this live stream, because best way to learn is obviously the people that have their boots on the ground over in Europe, and more specifically Germany right now. But we will be having on Torsten from 420 Pharma that's associated with Curaleaf in the next week or so. So Torsten, if you're listening right now, hello, my friend. Good to see you. David Benz writes CC Pharma. That's obviously related to Tilray. And
yeah,
there was some news this week or today. BlackRock. What was that? You want to clear some air
so
there?
There were people that were memeing and posting all over Twitter and Reddit that BlackRock has a 7.71% stake in Tilray. BlackRock increased their position in Tilray by 7.71% to a total of, I think, 2.7 million shares and a dollar weighted value of $1.8 million. It is what it is. I'd be curious to know why they're acquiring Tilray shares, but $1.7 million for them is less than a rounding error in the grand scheme of things.
What do they manage? How much?
Over $1 trillion. $1.7 million is like they pay more in prime broker fees on a daily basis than $1.7 million.
30012. Yes, High Tide was there last week. We actually highlighted a couple things that Raj and Omar told us to communicate last Monday on the show, but they were fielding a lot of calls, partnerships. They actually have the supply chain, they were saying, to get a lot of the product to make sure they reach consumer demand. But they're being very calculated on some of these potential partnerships that they could be potentially working on. But right now, they said all alive and well, and a lot of obviously interest. But we'd mentioned that last Monday when we were on the live stream. So yes, very aware that Raj and Omar were there last week. Drew Dinkins, to Anthony's point earlier, get Jason on. Jason and Ziad will be on Friday at the live stream. So, all right. That kicks off, or should say completes, segment 1 of today's Trade to Black. It's now time for segment number 2, our weekly segment, Insider's Edge, here on Trade to Black. On a Monday, Shad Dales, Anthony Varrell, Trade to Black. It's a favorite time of the week. Let's bring in the president of the American Trade Association for Cannabis and Hemp. Look at this guy. He looks very sophisticated today. Michael Bronstein. Good to see you, sir. How are things?
Good to see you. Well, I had to show up for work today, so you know.
You look like you showed up, my friend.
I'm sure you had quite the day, judging by the headlines I've been seeing and the short notice of that bill going through the House into committee last night.
It's been a very interesting day, certainly in Pennsylvania. I mean, there are a number of states that are going on, but I know that there was a vote earlier today in Pennsylvania's House Health Committee, which passed a legalization measure, which is now being called HB 1200 out of the committee and Senate to the floor after there was some discussion and some debate around it. Around the bill, and we could dive into all the different policy considerations that are going on, but the policy process in Pennsylvania is moving forward, and what we're seeing here, and I've said on the show on a number of occasions, is that the House is starting off in a place. It's a process that is not where this is going to end in Pennsylvania. I think that there were some things that had to be exercised from a caucus perspective in this, from a Democratic perspective, but also I think that there are things that are likely headed to a negotiation table, and that's where Democrats are trying to bring it. So the legalization discussion in Pennsylvania is very much alive right now.
Good.
And this is the most that's happened from a legislative perspective this year. There are a lot of questions about the current policy that was voted on and is on the table. Certainly from a marketplace perspective and what might happen. There are a lot of things that have to change about this bill. There's obviously the headline news is that there's a state store component to the retail aspect of it.
Is that a good thing? Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
No, that is a bad. That is very
bad.
So question, Mike. What's the strategy here with this bill? Because I think this is analogous to like Trump slapping 160% tariffs on China and then saying, "Hey, let's negotiate." Like this bill just seems like it's leaving the current MSOs or the current operators in the medical market like just hanging them out to dry. I think there was something like a $20 million conversion fee, a cash conversion fee to convert the license from med to rec, the state-owned stores, just the general nature of this. This bill just seems completely illogical on several levels. Was that where they wanted to start, and then let's just get what they can get in the negotiation process?
Yeah, I think that a vehicle, in order to move something into budget negotiations, there needed to be a vehicle. Okay. And so what's the vehicle that they're gonna start out with? I think that they looked at a piece of legislation. For the budget itself, there are only 2 revenue items that are in the budget that could get revenue. You have this, and you have gaming, and the House the House and Democrats are bringing legalization to the table in order to capture the revenue around the budget. So the thing is that the budget doesn't work in Pennsylvania this year without bringing that additional revenue.
Wow.
Okay.
So
how palatable?
So that's the rationale behind all this.
That's the rationale behind it. And it's not going to end where this thing starts. And I remember I think I said something also earlier on this, that I thought it was likely we could see a vote on a state store bill. And one of the things that we're seeing in this bill also is, so you had a vote on that. They had retail. It's unworkable for a number of reasons. So in Pennsylvania, just to sort of pull things back and explain a little bit more about why somebody would propose something like this and what it is in Pennsylvania, to understand like the political context for this, which we've talked about here a few different times. But for those who had the, those who are just tuning in, the reality is that in Pennsylvania, alcohol is sold through a state store system.
Okay.
And Pennsylvania Wine and Spirits is controlled by the Liquor Control Board in Pennsylvania. And there's been a movement in the state to privatize liquor for quite some time. And privatizing the state stores is an issue that has been picked up by Republicans in order to they don't like the model. They think it's a bad idea to be selling alcohol through the state stores. They think it's a bad idea to be selling anything through a state store. And Pennsylvanians agree with that. When you go out and you poll Pennsylvanians, it's highly unpopular. When you poll Pennsylvanians about selling cannabis, like they want cannabis sold, they don't want it sold in the state store. So the thing is that we're starting out in really the discussion around state stores is not a discussion around state stores per se. The interest in the state store from a Democratic perspective, as well as a Republican perspective, is that state stores, a number of the state store employees are union employees. So the politics in Pennsylvania,
I see it all too well here in Ontario. Same thing model for liquor, like it's all government controlled, and they're all part of a union. That's where it's.
But has anyone asked them how these state employees are going to be working for a federally legal business?
So that came up in the hearing, and that's something that's been raised quite continuously, because you can't have a state employee. It's certainly one thing to set up an adult use market in a state, right, where we have something that's federally illegal, right? Yeah. But the state itself is not compelling its employees to sell a Schedule I substance.
Correct.
Okay, without assent from the federal federal government. So we have a situation here that model is not going to work. It can't work. Okay, so the thing is that to me, this is a little bit more around messaging,
right,
and more around politics. All right, and we're going to enter into a budget negotiations where we're going to have basically folks come to the table and discuss what type of model it is that there should be. And I think that it is where this bill starts is highly unlikely as to where this process is going to end. Almost improbable, quite frankly, as to where this process is going to end. But the process has started. I think that the starting gun was fired when the governor gave his budget speech.
Yep.
And that starting gun was fired. People in industry who've been hit really hard. We all have over the last while on legalization efforts and what could happen. The governor was serious about what it was that he was saying. And I think that what we're seeing is folks are discussing and lining this up to the table. What remains to be seen is where Republicans in the Senate in Pennsylvania are going to be on a final deal. We've seen in public leadership has said that the caucus is not there yet on this. And again, this just sets up a negotiation.
Okay, it sets up a negotiation, but do they not seem far apart right now? Like you said, everything is heading in the right direction. What makes you believe that?
Well, to get to a deal,
I get it. You gotta negotiate.
A negotiation, because I've been through so many Pennsylvania budget negotiations that it's just like, all right, this is kind of the way it works. If we were talking about another, if we were talking about another bill, now to be sure, there are things that don't work in the context of other industries and regulation and things of that nature. But the actual process itself is playing out very much the way that a Pennsylvania budget plays out, right? So if we were to draw a map and say, okay, you are here, right? You have a bill that passes one chamber or the other, it gets sent to the other chamber, right? And then there's going to be a lot of screaming and yelling about why this shouldn't happen, why it's not going to work, right? And kind of digging in, around that.
So how should we be thinking in terms of timing? Is the fact that this bill came out of left field, let's say last night, already passed through the House, are these conversations going to pick up steam and we're going to just continually start to hear about this in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, because why would they move a bill? Why move a bill on May 5th?
Yeah.
In this year for when the budget is being negotiated in June, if there was an intent to try to bring this to the budget table.
Cool.
Right? Otherwise, you'd move it later in the year. You'd move it whenever. Okay. This was called for in the budget by the governor. There have been open discussions about passing a legalization bill in Pennsylvania. There have been committee hearings on it. And the fact of the matter is that we're sitting in front of a budget process. And people are trying to bring this to the table for the budget process because there's going to need to be revenue for the state. Again, the numbers don't add up unless cannabis legalization happens on some level, or they have to find money elsewhere.
Now, is that 12% excise tax that was proposed in this bill, is that palatable? And is that what is being arranged to be able to fund the budget, or do you expect that to get negotiated as well?
I think everything in the bill could be negotiated.
Okay.
Right. So even the tax numbers, right? Remember, there are a lot of things that are in this bill that are problematic. Okay. You talk about you've got state stores, there's THC caps that are in the bill. There are other things that we're looking at here, right? On the Senate side, what you have is Senator Laughlin and Senator Street, who also have their own bill, right?
And we've seen
that session after session, right? Yeah. So this bill goes over to the Senate, and I think there's an open question. Some people are saying, okay, well, this bill goes over to the Senate. It's that, is it dead on arrival, right? So the bill itself would be hugely problematic for the Senate. But the thing is then the Senate gets its shot about how it is that they want to treat this subject and how it is that they want to have this conversation.
Right.
Okay.
So
it moves to a negotiation table.
So where's the Republicans' calculus here? Like, do you see any factions, I guess, of the GOP warming up to legalization if, say, the restructure fits a lot of their values? Like, where's that sit?
I have always said that this vote will not happen in a vacuum. That an agreement around legalization in Pennsylvania is going to be an agreement that involves a number of things around a general budget agreement potentially, which is what it was that they're setting up. So people would not necessarily, even though they'll vote, on cannabis up or down, they may not necessarily be taking a vote as they're taking a vote on cannabis up or down, right? Republicans in the caucus, we've seen a couple of Republicans already come out for it organically, right? We saw Senator Yaw come out and say, prohibition, bad idea, right? There have been a couple other senators too that are Senate Republicans that have said, okay. And then we've seen other folks who are in Senate leadership say, we're not going to talk about this, right? We are not going to, entertain this particular idea, right? And we've seen people move forward and backward, over this issue, on it. And that to me, you have to look at the trend line. Okay. It's not, is the market up or down today? Right. It's what does it do over the next couple of months? What does it do when you step away and you look at, where the trajectory, of this is going? Okay. The thing that I think that we can say now is why the House would move on a bill now, because they're trying to set it up for budget negotiations. That's what's going on.
Right.
Okay. Because you don't move bills in May before June if you weren't going to try to have a discussion around it.
Okay. So we should be expecting these budget negotiations to be happening expeditiously. To a certain extent, they happen expeditiously, and then they could stall, right? They could do there are all types of things that can happen in a budget.
No, don't tell us that.
Well, the entire budget negotiation.
I get it.
I mean, it's not right. It's not where it is, but I don't think that what happened today and this bill is not the final word on legalization. It is far from it.
So part of this bill, it laid out a detailed plan for excise taxes, cannabis revenue distribution. It covered everything from expungement to economic. I'm just looking at some of this stuff right now. Equity, substance misuse treatment. When I look at all this stuff, how comprehensive, I guess, is this, social equity program in comparison to, say, other states? Is this truly about, sorry, you're going to say something, Anthony?
Sounds like New York. That they're going to go with social equity licenses and then finance the companies through a state fund and kind of go the exact same way New York went about it. And we know where New York is currently, unless Michael, is that pretty?
I think it's set up. I think the way that they think about it is set up differently.
Okay.
But I would also say, candidly, with the way the retail model is in this particular bill, it's not really set up for, anyone aside from the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that is likely to be discussed and addressed going down the line.
So,
well,
hold on. What are the implications of, let's say, the retail locations going under the Liquor Control Board? Would that retroactively cause all of the current dispensaries to go under that entity?
I think that the bill is, and we're still looking at what it is that they've done, but I think that the bill is silent. I think the bill is currently is silent on right. And if you read it, it's kind of like, okay, on the retail side, it's more set up under the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board.
Yeah.
And stores could be co-located, and what they mean is the current alcohol stores could sell cannabis in them under the Liquor Control Board. And that if they were to set up,
could that work? Could that work?
No.
It couldn't work, but it makes sense. I mean, cannabis.
Go ahead, Michael. Why
I don't think. I think it makes no sense. I mean, it's just, this is where they're starting. Okay. I think that they're starting it in order to make this, analogous to some of the other things that are going on, and also the politics that are going on around the bill. But the state store system is not, in my view, where the negotiations are starting off and where they're going to finish are two very different things. There's nobody in the Senate is not interested in a state store model in Pennsylvania. They are not, right? So I don't see them, I think that, quite frankly, this is just the start of the conversation.
30012, you're right. Kathleen Wynne and the Liberal government in Ontario at one time wanted to control all those cannabis stores, but when she wasn't reelected and Doug Ford came in, that changed overnight. But it's a lot different on how cannabis is viewed as alcohol, because you have these LCBO government-run type stores, then you have independent cannabis stores at every corner across like Ontario, which, they got to obviously kill the black market, but that's always something to think about. But, when you look at this in the grand scheme of things, like, where is Governor Shapiro's vision in all this? Like, what's the political path if he remains, I guess, non-committal on this retail structure? Like, how is this all going to work, do you think, ultimately?
I think what will happen is that there'll be a discussion about what conversion looks like as the bill moves forward, right? Remember, there's still a vote. This hasn't left the House yet. So to give you an idea of where the process is, there'll probably be a vote tomorrow, what'll be second consideration, and then maybe, they'll vote later on third consideration. So we've seen second consideration scheduled. Okay. And what we're going to see is a robust discussion around legalization, and we'll see the battle lines drawn on it. And this to me, I think the way that I think about this is it's going to end with the bill has to address what happens with Pennsylvania's already functioning and great medical marijuana market. Okay. And operators, right? What's the treatment there? Okay. In this bill, currently, you've got cultivation. Let's point out what they did do, right? If you've got cultivation that can convert, and you've got processing that can convert, right? And you've got those types of things that are going on. I think as this bill moves forward, it's not going to get more towards the states. It's going to get more away from it, right? So I think that this to me, from the discussions that I've been seeing and what I've seen, what I've heard, is this is really just the starting point. It's not going to end up in a state store, state store model.
So everybody stop freaking out. Just take a deep breath. This is the beginning of a long process, right?
There are a lot of innings in the game. I think that folks should know that this process. I mean, look, there's still a vote going forward. Do they have the votes are there the votes that are out there on this particular model in the House? The House is knife edge. It's a 1-vote majority of Democrats, right? So there's still an open question about what happens. But the only thing that anybody should really take from this is that it's another signal that there are legislative rumblings.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania legalization, right? You know how you sort of have volcanic activity, right? Yeah. And you sort of have the, rumbling, right? Until you get sort of the explosion. Well, that's what's going on right now. You sort of have the rumbling of what's going on. And this is yet another indicator that Pennsylvania is more ready to have the conversation than it was the day before.
Yeah. There's a lot of eyeballs on this state. We all know how big this state could be from a recreational standpoint. So if they do indeed pass adult use, is there any kind of impact? Like, you follow different states and how things are going to be structured. Does this have any kind of ripple effect on how this is going to be put together, let's say on potential other states that could go on market, down the road?
I would say that a final bill could, but the current proposal, okay, we've seen this in a couple different places. We saw one up in I think it was New Hampshire, right? Like, the reason why you're seeing this is because of Pennsylvania's outdated liquor laws. You're not seeing this because, right? So it's actually a function of the state. And for those of us who were around when the medical marijuana bill was passed, there was discussion around the medical marijuana bill that was quickly swept under the rug. This was 10 years ago. All right. And every time that this has come up, it ultimately has been cast aside for what's been passed. So I suspect that, like, as we move forward, the House version could have this. There are a number of different bills that are being considered.
Yeah,
this is a start. This is definitely not the end of the process.
Okay. Off the top, you had mentioned that there were some other fronts that were taking up your attention. What other states are moving right now, or what are you looking at?
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly we're watching some of the bills that are addressing intoxicating hemp in a number of states. Those continue to move. I think that we're seeing, we'll be in a couple of different states this week on different bills. We're watching everything from Texas to Ohio to Illinois to all these different states that are moving, and we continue to watch what's going on at the federal level, and participating in that discussion, because it's just that issue is
crucial.
It's crucial, and the way that states address this is crucial moving forward.
Well, this working group that Terry Cole announced at that press conference last week, I thought was interesting, but he'll review, one of his first priorities, review the rescheduling process. But the whole main objective is just to make sure that we start getting a better understanding and get the state and federal levels a little bit more aligned, which, hello, have you not been doing that for a few years, right?
Yeah. And that's what we want to see. I mean, we talked about the States Act, previously. Attach is captaining the cannabis scheduling reform effort through the Coalition for Cannabis Scheduling Reform, which is housed at Attach. So we're helping lead industry coordination around that effort. And I continue to think that we could potentially have some news on that. Hopefully, I think that the comments that were made were helpful to show that there is some thought going into this moving forward, at least potentially some action that could happen on this. And the administration, basically, when you see someone say something like that during questioning, I highly doubt that comments were not vetted prior to some of the discussion and some of the questions that were being brought up. So scheduling, in my view, is on the agenda.
Well, we had some viewers that reached out this weekend. We're like, I cannot believe he has not read the OLC memo, the redactment, basically, of all the information and data that shows how, the cause for, obviously, the case to reschedule cannabis. My personal opinion is I don't know how you can expect him to know all that information right now. The encouraging thing is that they are going to do the proper due diligence. They are going to do the proper research as to what that all entails. But, at the end of the day, I know there's a lot of people will say we've had these discussions before in the past, but this does feel different because we do have an OLC memo. And truthfully, you have the guy who potentially could be sworn in as the head of the DEA, who's the boss, openly admitting in a public forum that he's going to review this, which is something we've never really experienced before. So I'm optimistic, but at the same time too, we have been down this road, but there is data to back this up versus just an ideology. And that, to me, is what's really compelling.
It is compelling. And the American public knows this.
Yeah.
They all know it. We all know it. Okay. And scheduling, when these memos came out, think about how breathtaking it was to have the federal government for the first time say, cannabis could be used as medicine. It has medical benefit.
They finally said the quiet part out loud.
They said the quiet part out loud. There had been approvals that had gone through previously. Okay. But as a matter of policy, that was what they said. And it was based on research and based on science. if you follow the research and you follow the science, you're going to come up to a conclusion that resembles the conclusion that we all here have had. So I just think that the people that have been appointed have said, positive things in previous careers or in previous settings. So, we've had the president say something about it. So what, where is there to go but forward?
There's nowhere to go but forward. And I mean, even with the evidence-based drug policy, I might have butchered that, but I think it's the Evidence-Based Drug Policy Act that Ilhan Omar and Dina Titus are pushing. There's no reason for cannabis to be Schedule 1. We've all said that. We've shouted it from the rooftops. The evidence says so. They just need to get this done.
They couldn't even talk about that.
There's no justification for it. By definition, for a Schedule 1 substance, no one today can stand in front of an open forum and make an argument as to why cannabis should be Schedule 1. It doesn't fit the narrative, and it doesn't fit the qualifications to be on Schedule 1.
Wild.
Everybody knows that. No one just wants to admit it.
I know. That's wild. Outdated laws, right? I did a video the other week, late last week. It's got 175,000 views now, 4 days later. And some of the comments I'm reading, like we're talking people with like stage 4 cancer, chemotherapy, can't eat at all. And cannabis changed all that when it came to appetite suppression. And I'm thinking, this is great info to know and learn, because truthfully, if that's helping, you'd think just one thing would make you be curious to say, let's reschedule and do more research pertaining to this. But I think that's all a matter of time before that comes to conclusion. You still there, Michael?
I'm here.
Our good friend Guap, what did he write? Michael,
did it surprise you that the hemp bill got stalled in Florida? In its form, and the House and Senate couldn't come to a conclusion on it?
Yeah, and I think like even the stalling out of that bill, what it showed is that people still wanted to address the issue, right? Correct. It was just that you had two different sides that couldn't get at an agreement, and I think that it was all around from a policy perspective, the synthetic issue. And over time, the synthetic issue is going to play itself out. And it's just going to go one way because there's no defense to where that is.
So we had Representative Saltzman in Florida saying that there are good actors on the synthetic side. That's why this bill didn't pass. She doesn't. Every hemp dispensary in Florida has a sign outside, no medical card needed, telling everybody that this is how you're going to circumvent the MMTC program. And they sell synthetics, and they sell God knows what kind of THCA flower, sprayed flower, all the exotic products. And she says that there are good actors on the synthetic side. That's why. And it was also the bill would just kneecap the hemp industry in its current form. And she went to the mat for it. It sounded like she was basically just in the pocket of the hemp companies and just didn't want had other interests at heart.
To Anthony's point, Michael, how do we even get to a point? No medical card needed, not even hiding from it. Like, what do you do in those situations? Like, do you?
I think there's enforcement around there. I think that you see, we've seen products being pulled off the shelves by DAX in Florida. It's one of those things where folks are going to take a look at it and they're going to realize what it is. Okay.
Correct.
We've seen this time and time again in different states on the synthetic issue. And when you get something to pass, it takes a while. It can take a while. It can take a couple of different, it could take a couple of different times. So to me, I think it's really about it. I think it's really about education. We have to be at a point where you're legalizing natural product, and you're not creating a protective layer around what are essentially synthetic drugs.
Right.
And how do you argue against that? You can delay the bill. You can do all the things that you want to do. We've seen in states that did do that, they started rolling it back. because they saw what they did and they're like, wait a second, we didn't know exactly what we were doing.
I said it on Sunday. And maybe some people might not have liked it, but adult use and rolling back hemp is a lost cause until DeSantis, Evan Power, and the people that are ingrained in the Republican Party of Florida are out of Tallahassee. I think that's just reality.
Yeah.
They're going to keep railroading the bills. They're going to keep supporting that industry. They hate the MMTCs for obvious reasons that I don't want to get into again and just go back down the road of why A3 got railroaded in the election as to where DeSantis was doing borderline illegal things that I think we're still going to see some things come to light, and he's going to get taken to court, and maybe there'll be some justification there. But I don't think anything on the cannabis front moves forward until DeSantis is gone from Tallahassee, just being pragmatic.
How long is that relationship?
You just have to take a view. You have to take the long view of this, of where this is going.
Yeah.
What's the trend?
Yeah.
It was trending the other way for a while. There were a lot of questions. Remember, we've been down this road for about 7 years.
Yeah.
Okay. And it was about 2020 where people started really doing the conversions of what it is that they've been doing. So we're in it, but I think that there's a different trajectory going on right now around this issue than people have been talking about it.
Yeah.
No, it's there. People know now. People are educating themselves.
Yeah.
I know that Sam has been gloating about the U.S. attorney from Washington, D.C. going after that dispensary because it's within 1,000 feet of a school. Why doesn't the U.S. attorneys go and find all these smoke shops and these hemp shops that are 1,000 feet within schools in Texas, in Florida, and actually start to enforce the laws versus that one-off in the nation's capital?
Well, I think what you're going to see is you're going to see around those actions. I think what you're likely to see, we've seen attorneys general be very intentioned with how it is that they're approaching this subject in states. We first saw that we've seen letters go out and then enforcement actions happen.
Correct.
And this is their bread and butter. I mean, it's
what they do.
Exactly what AGs do.
Yeah.
So, and in terms of consumer protection and public health and safety, that's what we're seeing. So if you're an unlicensed operator you're selling in an unlicensed way, that's something that over the long term, that's a goal from a legalization perspective, is to have a regulated market. It's not have a market and people are selling outside of a market. You can't have regulation and then no regulation, right? Because then it's meaningless.
For the same compound. That's
of the same compound. THC needs to be regulated like THC consistently across the board. There can't be legal THC and illegal THC.
Correct. Which there is.
Which there is.
And that's why the hemp side of the equation, they just can't grasp that. It's like, we don't fundamentally believe that you guys shouldn't be allowed to operate. We don't fundamentally go against your product, aside from the synthetics. It's the fact that there is legal THC and illegal THC. And the way that this thing is just built is completely it's an oxymoron in itself.
It is actually a wild relic of federal policy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Like this.
Imagine buying a bottle. Imagine buying a bottle of vodka, whether it's got 40% alcohol or 90. Like, to me, it's just, but this is all part of the growing process. And as much as we hate it, it's just, these are the conversations that have to keep going, because in the grand scheme of things, on the business side, in a legality standpoint, we're just getting started, but a lot has changed and it still needs to change.
So sometimes we will look back at this and think of this moment years from now and go, how did that happen?
I know. Yep.
How did it happen?
Tough to believe it when you're in it. But one thing I do want to ask you is, somebody wrote that Michael Bronstein owns many leather-bound books and his apartment smells of rich mahogany. Is that true?
It's false. And I'll tell you why that's false. Okay. It is false because I'm highly allergic to dust.
Oh.
So I have a dust allergy. I would never, I'm sitting in my office right now. Okay. I got to crawl into the bottom part of my office to talk to you. So we're not moving around where everybody else is.
Yeah.
So most of the leather bound books that I had have been given away, but they were committed to memory.
Yeah.
So that's where I break out my knowledge.
Here's an interesting question we haven't asked.
Fake news guap.
If you didn't know.
Yeah. Michael, the name of your organization. The name of your organization includes both cannabis and hemp. You're walking a legal tightrope. How do you please both constituencies?
I don't think I'm walking there's no tightrope to be walked here. I mean, I think that you have an industry that is looking to be legal, be regulated. And the reality is that if people are with that message, and our mission for the last 10 years has been to create a legal and regulated market for both cannabis and hemp. These things are from a product standpoint. Sometimes they're similar and sometimes they're quite different. Yeah. When we started out and we were working on hemp and around the first farm bill, none of us really, I think, anticipated what the result of people taking the law as far out as they did right now, or what that interpretation would necessarily be. I think that cannabis and hemp are two wonderful industries, and in a lot of ways very similar, but also different. And I don't think people talk enough about how good hemp can be, the industrial applications for it.
Good point.
And quite frankly, what's going on right now is ruining a massive opportunity in the hemp industry. You have people who are running around that when you call a synthetic THC product hemp, really what you're doing is you're degrading the name of the hemp industry, the true hemp industry here. And so I think that you need to, we have a responsibility here to engage effectively, to talk about the naturalness of the plant, to talk about the naturalness of both cannabis and hemp, and provide a better future for the industry. So I don't think it's really, I don't think it's really a tightrope at all. In fact, if it's anything, it's the laws that have created the tension of interpretation. It's not, the product or the people per se.
Correct.
Did Tillis and McConnell do this on purpose? Was this the outcome? No, I don't believe that at all. That they did this on purpose.
No, this was not the intent of the farm bill. Let me ask you this: if it was the intent of the farm bill to legalize synthetic THC products and create, broad legalization movement through that, and Congress had the foresight to do it, don't you think that they would have put age limits on it?
Yeah, good
in
point.
The bill? Well, if they didn't,
said.
Any sort of regulations around.
Yeah, why is it not? Yeah, or any regulations.
Well said. Bob says it right. Total THC percentage clears so much up. We will get there one day, and when we do, we will look back to your point, Michael, and say, "Wow, we lived in interesting times." But we will be at the forefront of change, which is why we keep doing this.
Now's the time for sensible regulation, both cannabis and hemp.
Agreed.
Sensible regulation.
But like I said, we will be at the forefront of change, which is why we do this every Monday with you. Insider's Edge, presented by the American Trade Association for Cannabis and Hemp. As always, great seeing you, and look forward to having you back here next Monday, sir.
Great to see you.
All right. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate your time. I absolutely love that segment. We learned so much.
Very, very informative segment. And next Monday, we will have Boris on at 4:00 from Curaleaf.
There you go.
So he's confirmed. He'll be on. He'll be with us. Their earnings come out after the bell on Thursday, but Boris will be on Monday at 4:00.
Okay, cool. Which days will you be in Berlin? Huberman. Sorry, I forgot to respond to you the other day. What weekend is that again, Mary Jane?
It's the 20th, 21st, and 22nd of June.
So we were told that the Friday of that weekend, so the 20, 21st, 22nd, we were told the Friday, the 20th, is more business oriented. So we'll probably be broadcasting on the 20th, but we still haven't determined our dates yet. But we'll probably arrive into Germany at some point midweek and be gone probably by Saturday or Sunday. I know you'll have to hurry up and get home because you have a newborn, but should be fun. Did the SN deal earnings get discussed already? Lots to unpack from the strategic view part, where the board is discussing a possibility of delisting from the New York Stock Exchange to legally own U.S. assets. Any takes on this? Writes Captain J.T. Kirk. We can discuss this a little bit more in depth later this week and do our proper research. But to answer your question, we have touched on it a little bit, but not in depth to the point where you're asking. Did you want to add anything to that, Anthony?
I've spoken to Zach about it directly. I know he addressed it on the call. It's being evaluated.
Yeah. Okay. Good stuff on Boris for next Monday. So we got a big lineup coming up later this week, and appreciate all the support. Tara, Norman, and the Cole Memo, thank you so much for the contributions here today. Always greatly appreciated. And we appreciate it here on Traded Black. To get any kind of money, always very, very welcomed at any time for anyone to send that money over. And we very much appreciate it. Something we don't take for granted. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your day. And we'll be back here Wednesday, go in depth with some of the earnings reports because some of the numbers will be going live while we're here on our live stream. So it'll be an interesting week. As I always say, everyone, stay open-minded, stay connected. We'll see you back here Wednesday in our latest Traded Black. Thanks for watching.
Stay classy, San Diego.
Stay classy. Hey, everybody. Stay connected here. The latest Traded Black podcast. Another great episode under the belt. What'd y'all think? Do you like what we had to say? Please leave any comments below. And as usual, make sure to subscribe to our baked-in newsletter. Check us out on Apple and Spotify. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to smash that like button, leave some comments, as I said before, and subscribe to our channel because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everybody, for watching.